You are listening to the SDSU podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your host, Andre Hagverdian. We want to welcome everybody to the SDSU podcast. This is episode 149. The football season is off and cracking. San Diego State is now 1-0 with a win over Stony Brook on Thursday night. Um, I'm your host, Andre Hagverdian, so thank you for joining us as always. Want to introduce a new member of the EVT football team this year, Bryant Thursby. Thank you for joining us, Bryant, and maybe give the viewers a little bit about yourself and how they can find you on social media.
Thank you so much, Andre. It's football season. Football season's here. I've been writing for EBT for probably about 7 months now, 8 months now. Mainly covering softball. That's what I did during the softball season and everything, and covering them throughout their Mountain West tournament journey and through everything like that, through the regionals. Covered a little bit of Padres every now and then, especially around trade deadline time. Haven't really been doing a lot of Padres stuff recently. Being very busy. I'm a high school football coach. I'm an assistant coach at a local high school here in Riverside County, between Paris and Menifee area. Uh, Trying to get back out there for San Diego State football, either potentially writing articles or mainly doing podcasts. I'll be around for basketball as well because I'm a big basketball fan, football fan, maybe a little bit of baseball there, but I love softball too. So I'll be around for all San Diego State sports, especially the big ones.
I'm curious, how did you become a high school football coach? Did you play football and kind of transition into coaching?
So I played football in high school for a little bit. Then some family stuff popped up, so I wasn't able to finish playing high school football. But it was funny while I was working because one of my other jobs, because I worked two jobs technically as coaching and retail. I worked at Dick's Sporting Goods, and
Hmm.
one of the guys that worked there, me and him got to talking one night. We were closing, and he ended up telling me that he was a football coach in the area, and they needed a guy. And he was listening to me talk football, and he goes, you seem very knowledgeable, very smart. I want you to talk to the head coach and see if maybe you can get on. And last year was my first year on the staff. I did defense last year, defensive line. This year, I'm doing offense, tight ends, blocking backs, a little bit of play calling here and there on our Frost Soft JV team. But football's fun. Football's fun.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Definitely get excited talking football. I mean, we didn't do a lot of coverage in the off season for various reasons, but like even during fall camp, you talk about so much football, but everything is hypothetical, and then you finally have a game that you can talk about. So it's always exciting to have these podcasts when there's an actual game to discuss. Um, so yeah, before we get into the actual game, there are some other new members of the EVT team I wanted to highlight. Um, Obviously, Don DeMars, everyone is aware of as our photographer. Johnny Oliveira, who's another one of our writers. He did a lot of pre-game and post-game videos and live tweets during the game as well. So make sure to catch him. His Twitter handle or X handle is at SD underscore sports mem. So make sure to check him out. And then some new members, Brandon Pollard, he's a photographer who's helping us out this year. You can find his Instagram at B Pollard Photos. And then Will Wilson, who's our videographer, putting out those fire recap videos of the game. You can find them at BRP Visuals on Instagram. So some new blood into the mix. So we're excited about that for sure. So if you haven't checked them out, definitely do. So Stony Brook, 42 to nothing. You could make the case it was a stress-free game for Aztec fans watching it from the opening kickoff. They're obviously an 18-point favorite against an FCS team, but considering how some of these other FCS versus FBS teams games went, for example, Washington State, who we'll talk about later, who's San Diego State's next appointment, they needed a field goal to beat Idaho I think with 8 seconds left last night. UNLV, I think, struggled with Idaho State. 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago or last weekend.
Yeah, last
And then
weekend.
North Dakota,
Almost
former
took out
defensive
Kansas State.
coordinator Eric Schmidt goes to North Dakota and almost beats 17th ranked Kansas State on the road last night. As we're recording this, this is Sunday. That's why I said last night. Um, so, I mean, obviously Kansas State came back and won, but considering some of those teams went on the road and almost won, San Diego State winning 42 nothing definitely looks better uh, in the bigger picture. What were your overall thoughts of the game?
Overall thoughts of the game, those that were watching at home understand the type of stuff we were going through with the Mountain West app and the streaming and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So at
Yeah,
times the streaming would get kind of messed up. But one thing I noticed like immediately is the offensive line in the run game in particular. Very big offensive line. They're maulers. There were a couple times, where I was watching their down blocks or watching their zones, whatever they were doing, whatever the run scheme was. Sometimes they were able to get there and use their length, but going up against better athletes than Stony Brook, it might get taken advantage of because they're a little slow climbing, getting to the next level. Not exactly the best pad level, but they did their job being maulers and everything and getting Lucky Sutton, um, Christian Washington, all those running backs, getting them
yeah,
holes to get to. Jaden Denegal, there were a couple people that I talked to that were impressed with him. I'm yet to be impressed, mainly because in the RPO system, didn't turn the ball over, which is huge.
right.
Always huge to not turn the ball over. But in the RPO system, especially the way that Sean Lewis was running it and everything, there were multiple times that I saw intermediate routes that he should have hit on the dime, but he overthrows it or he leads it too much. He should have thrown two interceptions, but they got
Yeah,
dropped. So he should have had two turnovers. So I want to see a little bit of improvement there from Denegal over the intermediate part of the field. He missed a big deep ball as well. I thought the lob pass on the first drive that ended up setting up a first and goal could have been a little bit better because if the safety actually recognized it quick enough and everything, he knocks out the tight end. It's an incomplete pass. I would have liked them to put that more on a line. I think there's definitely a lot to improve on. I definitely sound like a downer here to a 14-0 victory,
yeah.
but there's a lot to improve on going into Saturday.
Yeah, I what I liked from him was was his real first real game action since high school. All right, he played at Michigan, but I think it was more like mop-up duties, right, in a blowout. Um, I think they only had one pre-snap penalty, and that was right before he threw the touchdown to Bostic, so he kind of made up for that. But I think you're right. I think I might have had three interceptions he could have had that were dropped, and a lot of those were middle of the field stuff. Um, and his completion percentage was only 52%, so that's definitely improvement. But I like the fact that he completed 13 passes for 207 yards. I think in the last few years, San Diego State's gotten used to having 18, 19, 20 receptions and like 130 yards. A lot of those dink and dunk stuff. But I think he had 244-yard completions that definitely helped that average. But those were really nice throws. So, a lot of good. I agree with you on some of the stuff to clean up, but the no turnovers, the one pre-snap penalty, I think was pretty good. Um, and Lucky Sutton, everyone's been talking about Lucky Sutton since the day he came to campus. He had some good runs in previous years, but having 22 carries and getting 100 yards was impressive. Um, 9 of 19 on third down and 3 of 4 on fourth down. I think that's really good. Um, So yeah, well, here's another stat. I was looking at the post game notes. San Diego State, the last 60 times they have rushed for 200 plus yards, they're 58 and 2. It's almost an automatic. But I
Yeah.
think the part that I noticed is when I started covering the team in 2021, I think that stat was like 54 and 2, which tells me they've only had like four in the last 3 years of 200 yards plus more. And that was something that they did every game
Yeah, and that's a
for
little
years.
unorthodox.
So
It's a little
getting back to
unorthodox.
that, I know it's an FCS team, but getting back to that where they're doing that a little bit more commonly than they have the last 3 or 4 years, I think would be helpful. What do you think?
I definitely think that the run game is a massive part of winning football. I think that's especially been instilled into San Diego State football when Rocky Long was here and how much he wanted to establish the run because when you establish the run, you keep your offense on the field, you keep your defense off the field, which gives your defense energy, which gives them time and energy to create turnovers, something that San Diego State has been known for, especially under Rocky Long and even under Coach Hoke, creating turnovers and being able to pound the ball, keep the defense off the field, so that way when they get on the field, they can go for as many interceptions, strip sacks as they can because they have so much energy. So I definitely think being able to run the ball and establishing the run is going to be a huge part of Sean Lewis's offensive play calling this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the Jacob Bostic, obviously, he had 3 catches for 56 yards. He started in place of Miles Kit Denton, even though Kit Denton was listed higher on the depth chart. But Kit Denton came in and played still about 20 snaps, so I don't think it was an injury thing. But he's a guy that came from Texas A&M, right? It's a Power Four school. He's got the talent. Um, he made some nice plays. But he didn't. His 3 catches, 56 yards were all on that second drive, I believe, and didn't have much the rest of the game. Um, but what I want to talk about is the defense. First shutout since the famous 6-0 win over Weber State in 2019. Um,
Don't remind us of that one.
yeah, anyone who's there, and I was there, that you won't remember, you won't forget that one. But it was
I was
still a
at that
win.
one too. I was at that one too.
Yeah, my friends, the people who I have season tickets with back then, still remember that one. Yeah, even though they're not diehard Aztec fans, they'll still remind me of that 6-0 win. But first shutout since then, only allowed 95 yards. I think it's the fourth time they've held an offense under 100 yards in Division 1 history for San Diego State. Um, Obviously, you're playing an FCS team, so you've got bigger, faster, stronger guys, but still impressive what they did considering some of the other games we talked about. What did you see from the defense?
The D line. Trey White was getting a lot of chips from the running back, a lot of chips from the tight end on his side whenever he was rushing the passer. So it was kind of hard for him to kind of make his stamp on the game, but he made it without having to get a sack. Because even when he had chips, he was able to force the quarterback to step up in the pressure the defensive line, or whenever we had a blitz, kind of just made the quarterback feel it, and the quarterback had to get rid of the ball quicker. I love the stunts that the defense was making with the defensive line and the linebackers, the movement, the disguising of coverages that we did. I think that's something that's going to be huge going into Saturday's game against Washington State, being able to disguise coverages. And then Chris Johnson, I mean, he's going to be a stud. Chris Johnson's going to be an
Yeah.
absolute stud this year. He might just be one of those cornerbacks where you're like, hey, that's your number one on the other team. We need you to stay on his side, and you're gonna lock him down.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I think Chris Johnson had a really good year last year, but there were times where he maybe got his eyes um, drifting a little bit and got beat a few times. Obviously, again, FCS opponent, but he was on target, just on lock throughout that whole game. I'm really curious to see him this year. And like, I think obviously being named to the top 300 Senior Bowl list means that scouts are looking at him. And so yeah, he could definitely. I know Trey White gets a lot of the publicity and deservedly so, but Chris Johnson might be the best NFL prospect on that defense right now.
1000%. Another cornerback to highlight. He had a little bit of a rough game. He had some penalties. Bryce Phillips. He he's interesting. Him and having Chris Johnson, having those two as the top cornerbacks is very interesting. I think those two, especially Bryce Phillips, can get a little handsy at times, which is a part of being aggressive corner, and especially when you're trying to apex the receivers at their routes, trying to make sure you knock them off their routes and everything. It's going to happen. But I'm curious to see how Bryce Phillips and Chris Johnson, the duo, do on Saturday against Washington State.
Yeah, the linebackers also were pretty good. Tano, Latuli, and Owen Chambliss. They did give Chambliss a sack on that intentional grounding. I want to see if that gets corrected during the in the stat sheet come Monday, because I want to say that they ruled that an incomplete pass and a roughing intentional grounding, and they didn't give him the sack. So I'm kind of curious about that. But he still had a good game. He's trying to be the guy because he had a bunch of injuries last year, and staying healthy and showing what he could do, I think, is an important part of that. August Salvati, we got to talk about him. 1.5 sacks. He's almost, I think he's a third stringer technically, if he's not on the two deep, but um, he's good. I mean, Owen Chambliss in the post-game press conference said we can't block him. He's not blockable in practice. So he wasn't surprised by what he did. And so I think he's a guy that when you get into those late game situations where the other team's going to pass and you know that they're going to pass and you want to get guys in there, I think Salvati's going to be the one in there. And I even noticed a few times Trey White moved inside and rushed from the inside with Salvati outside him. So that's definitely their third down long packages. I think that they're going to be using a lot. Got to give it to Rob Orich. First game as a defensive coordinator at the FBS level. Shutout. I mean, you can't number one defense technically, given that they only gave up 95 yards and 0 points. But you gotta give him a shout out for at least starting his Aztec defensive coordinator era with a shutout.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Tano Atuli was all over the field. He definitely is somebody that showed up in my eyes because I kind of knew before, he played the game today that or yesterday that he was gonna be one of those linebackers he's all over the field. You know what I mean? He's gonna be the one of those guys that he's a ball seeker, and he did a really good job not biting on the fake a couple times. One of the plays on the running backs on the dump off, he was not fooled by it. A couple times they tried to do screens. He wasn't fooled by it. He was able to break it up, whether he didn't make the play or not, but forcing them to go back inside to his help. He
Yeah.
did a really good job there. Um, I think being able to create one-on-one opportunities. I think his name's August. I think his name
Yeah.
is. Being able to create one-on-one opportunities for him because of Trey White is massive. Because he does have length with his arms and everything, and does a really good job kind of picking the one side of the offensive lineman and not really attacking the chest. He did a really good job of that, being able to just pick one side and attack that side and take advantage of his length. So creating one-on-one opportunities for him and even Trey White when they're both on the one side going up against a guard tackle duo there could be very interesting and could bode problems in the future.
Yeah, the one thing to note, got a lot of social media chatter is attendance. It was listed at 20,624. Definitely didn't look like there was 20,000 people there. Um, you can talk about the various reasons for that, and we have in years past. But you'd like to see, in 2 weeks in 2 weeks or actually in 3 weeks when Cal comes to town. Um, that'll be at least it's tough to say a packed house, but at least a bigger showing than there was on Thursday night because especially if this team can continue winning and continue playing well, you need Snapdragon to get loud. And that I know you weren't there, but from what you could see in terms of the Mountain West feed or the KUSI feed, what were your thoughts on that?
I thought the students showed out. That's one thing I got to give massive props to is the students showed out. Now
Yeah,
I've been critical of the student section in the past, especially as of late when it comes not even just to football but to basketball.
yeah,
I've been very critical of the student section, mainly because of interaction and people sitting down and stuff like that. When part of what made the show is everybody standing the entire game, you know, any bunch of chants for every specific school that we played, every home game. So I've definitely been critical of them, but I thought the students showed out on Thursday. First week in school and everything, you're getting set up in your classes, set up in your dorm rooms. It's a busy week, and the students being able to show out on a Thursday night when probably half of them, maybe more than half, had Friday morning classes,
yeah.
definitely is a huge sign for student impact and student students wanting to be at the game and wanting to participate in these type of events. Now besides the students and the rest of, the general public, um, definitely not the best showing. Facing an FCS team that you're going to blow out, you definitely want a little bit more than 20,000. It didn't seem like it on the broadcast, but you also couldn't see like the nosebleed sections up there
Yeah.
on the 50 on the away side. So you couldn't really see that. But there's definitely ways to improve attendance. But one of those ways that every San Diego sports fan knows is winning. You
Yeah.
win, they'll show up.
Yeah, obviously we'll get into Washington State, but could be a drastic difference coming 2-0 back home versus 1-1 and how that does season. The one other thing I wanted to address is the penalties. For the most part, I think they did a pretty good job. I think they only had three penalties for 20 yards first half, but the two unsportsmanlike penalties in the third quarter, I think on back-to-back plays, the 2-point conversion and then the first defensive play after the kickoff. I think those are areas that Sean Lewis was not happy about after the game and will look to correct. But, when they had 16 penalties for 149 yards against an FCS team last year,
Yeah.
it's still good to only have, I think, seven for 55 or 65 yards, something like that. So something to look at as the season goes on.
Yeah, definitely something to look at. The penalties and stuff. And Sean Lewis has kind of made it a point in his press conferences and definitely to the players. We want to play a clean football game because, first and 10, first drive, second drive of the game, whatever it is for the offense, a false start or a holding or an illegal formation or an illegal shift, that sets the sticks back. You go from first and 10 to first and 15 or first and 10 to first and 20 now. Now the
Yeah.
sticks are set back. So being a very disciplined team is something that Sean Lewis seems to be driving home in this offseason and in his press conferences and everything is that he wants a clean football game.
Anything we haven't talked about that game that you want to reference before we move on to Washington State?
Nothing really besides, the receivers. I think we have a really good receiving core with Bostick, Kitten, Napier, Mikey Welsh. I think we have a really good running back room with Lucky Sutton, Washington. It's the other
Cardwell.
Cardwell. Cardwell. He is all those three as the running back rotation. Probably going to be more Cardwell and Sutton than Washington, but those three really good running back rotation. Love our receivers and hopefully see improvement from Denegal on Saturday.
Yeah, Washington State. It's a 7:15 kickoff Saturday night on the CW. I think Aztec fans need to get used to that channel because it looks like it's going to be a partner for the Pac-12 next year. Um, Washington State, we mentioned it. They played Idaho, which was the other thing to mention is Stony Brook was ranked 25th in the preseason FCS top 25. Idaho was ranked 12th, and they obviously went in and lost to Washington State last night or on Saturday night, 13-10 on a 32-yard field goal with 8 seconds left. Um, Washington State struggled. They've got a new head coach, Jimmy Rogers. They've got a bunch of new players. I think they've got something like 70 new players on the roster, which
It's a
is
complete turnover
crazy.
over there.
They had Julian Duggar, no, Jackson Potter, who started at quarterback, won a competition. He came out of the game because he was struggling. They put Duggar in for two drives. He went three and out both times. They put Potter back in, and he led them to the game-winning field goal drive. He had a decent game statistically, 24 of 31 for 209 yards, but it was just not a lot of points. And they only rushed for 3 yards, which is insane.
Yeah, on
So
22 carries.
on 22 carries, so there might have been some sacks there. I think they had an errant snap that they lost a bunch of yards on. Jimmy Rogers said it's kind of he was looking at the stats post game. He's like, this is kind of embarrassing looking at that three rushing yards. John Mateer, he's gone, right? They
Yeah.
played Washington State played here at Snapdragon last year and beat San Diego State. with John Mateer. I forget where he transferred to, but he went to a Power Four,
What
um,
Power Four in the South? Power Four school in the South, I'm pretty
Oklahoma, maybe.
sure. Was it Oklahoma? It might be
I
Oklahoma.
don't know. But I don't know if you had a chance to watch and some of that game against Idaho, or if you looked into Washington State. What do you make of them?
I looked into it. I wasn't able to watch the game and watch how it unfolded, but being able to look into it, one thing that is a definite positive for San Diego State going into Saturday is that it does not seem Washington State can run the football. Even if you have an errant snap that loses you 10 yards and stuff like that in sacks, you still should be able to run the ball better than zero
Yeah,
point 0.1 average per carry. Getting 3 yards, that's terrible. And that's a really good sign for San Diego State, the way that we run our defense and everything, and the Aztecs run the defense with a 4-2-5 with the type of different looks that they give and bring, could definitely be massive, especially getting after the quarterback. Let's see here. I have the stats right here. Idaho had one sack. They had one sack. They had seven tackles for losses, which
yeah,
is a really good sign for San Diego State. The fact that they were able to get, if you add the sacks and the tackles for losses, up eight total negative yard
yeah,
tackles in the backfield. With the way that Rob Ark is going to be able to stunt and manipulate the defensive line and kind of play games up there with the offensive line of Washington State and with the quarterback. The defense could have a really good game. Obviously, it's probably not going to be a shutout again. You know,
yeah.
that those things rarely happen, but this could be a really good game defensively, and we could be seeing a low scoring game on Saturday between San Diego State and Washington State.
Yeah, the one interesting thing is Levi Eckhouse. He was the guy who started in the Holiday Bowl against Syracuse when Mateer actually he did go to Oklahoma. I just looked it up. So I was fact checked myself. And I think he had 4 touchdowns, 350 yards in the Holiday Bowl, but he's now a third string quarterback under the new head coach. So I don't know if the bad performance from Saturday night will make a change in the quarterbacks or if they're going to try to play two guys still. But that's something that I think that San Diego State coaching staff's going to have to consider maybe a quarterback change. But their offensive line has 3 new starters. I did note the 7 TFLs because I think that could be something where Atana Latuli and Owen Chambliss, Trey White, those guys can feast on in that running game, getting in the backfield. Um, they even though they gave up on the defensive side, I think they gave up almost 200 rushing yards to Idaho, a 100-yard
188.
rusher. So you could hope that the running game that San Diego State had against Stony Brook can pose problems again for
Now, a
Washington State.
majority of the rushing yards did come from Idaho's quarterback,
Okay.
Joshua Wood. Um, he ran the ball 12 times for over 100 yards, while the running backs on the team, Alicia Cummings, Art Williams, Hayden, I don't even want to pronounce that last name. Um, 2.4 average, 3.2 average, 2.4 average between the three running backs for Idaho, while the quarterback ran for an 8.4 average, 101 yards, 12 carries.
Yeah.
So this definitely could be a game where we see Jaden Denegal use his legs a little bit more than he did use
Yeah.
against Stony Brook. We saw against Stony Brook that he has the ability to use his legs and get out of the pocket and get some yardage, get some first downs and everything. So this could be a game where the RPO is even more used by Sean Lewis
Yeah.
and emphasized. So this could be a game where we see Jaden Denegal have probably six or more carries, and probably if he gets around over 50 yards on six carries, 7 carries, could bode well for the offense.
Yeah, we'll have to see because Denegal had an injury in the first drive of the game, came out for a few plays, but then came back in. Maybe that factored into why he didn't run the ball as often. We'll see if there'll be a package for Bert Emanuel now that they're past a game week and they have a lot of times when NFL teams play on a Thursday night, they call it a mini bye because they've got the weekend without to not have to play a game and extra time to like give some of the players time off and the coaching staff to scout the next opponent. So I wonder if maybe this will give them an opportunity to put some packages in for Emmanuel, who could possibly kind of exploit that RPO. But yeah, we'll have to see. Sean Lewis is going to have a press conference on Monday. Um, and I'm sure one of us will ask him about Donegal's injury and if he's good to go. And um, the Mountain West this year has an injury or an availability report that's due 48 hours before a game, where you have to say whether a player is questionable or out. Now, it doesn't apply to non-conference games, so they're not going to probably put that out for this game either. They didn't put it out for Stony Brook. But I'm going to be really interested when conference season starts, how those availability reports are going to look. Um, but yeah, I'm sure he'll get asked on Monday about Donegal's health and how to factor in. But you would think that the fact that he came back in and played up until the fourth quarter, he should be good to go. Um, so yeah, the Washington State only gave up 33 pass yards to Idaho. So I know that you mentioned that their quarterback is mobile and had a lot of yards, so they probably don't have a great passing game, but only giving up 33 yards. Um, I think it's good. They've got good corners, Colby Humphrey and Jamori Colson. So you can tell, Jacob Bostic, Napier, and Donovan Brown, those guys are probably going to need to step up and make some plays like they did in the first game. Um, One other mention, former Aztec Darian Dalton, a defensive tackle, transferred to Washington State in the offseason. He had a one tackle on Saturday night. He played 25 snaps, got a really good PFF grade, 78.7. So it's a familiar face that some of his former teammates will see for him as well. What other things jump out to you about this matchup?
Washington State forced a couple turnovers. They forced a couple fumbles, which if you're lucky, Sutton, Jay Denegal, Cardwell, those guys that are going to be running the ball, Spurt Emmanuel, keeping the ball secure, making sure we're not turning the ball over. Part of winning football is making sure that there's no turnovers, having a clean game, winning the turnover battle. So I feel like the keys to the game, which I'm going to sound like a broken record because I say it all the time when it comes to football, is the turnover battle. And the turnover margins are massive when it comes to winning football games. So that is going to be a massive key for San Diego State and Sean Lewis's crew is not turning the ball over. And then on the defensive side of the ball for Rob Arick, being able to create turnovers, whether you do that up at the front line with the front seven, front six, stunting, or you do that disguising coverages and being able to pick off Washington State's quarterback, whoever that may be, if it's a QB battle this week or if they stick with the starter from this past game.
Yeah, we mentioned San Diego State didn't turn the ball over against Stony Brook, but neither did Stony Brook. So it was a rare game where neither team had a turnover. Um, but the defense, I think, has focused on that. They talked about that as something that they wanted to do more of, force more turnovers because their turnover count last year was not great. Whether that's interceptions, fumbles, strip sacks, things like that. Um, so yeah, I think they will need to. I think um, Washington State had one turnover themselves. They lost a fumble in their in their end zone. I think inside the 10 or something like that, which led to the tying field goal from Idaho in the fourth quarter. So that's definitely, you're right. Turnover battle. Every football coach talks about that, and it's going to be crucial when you go on the road against a team that plays well at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Turnover battle is definitely massive when it comes to winning football games. Um, Other key that is going to be a huge key, especially in this game, considering how Washington State fared running the football against Idaho, um, and how they fared defending the run against Idaho. Being able to win in the trenches is going to be massive in this game. Obviously, you talked about how Washington State has three new offensive linemen
Yeah.
starting for them on their offensive line. Obviously, San Diego State has new offensive linemen too, starting for them, but the defensive line and with Trey White and a couple transfers in August and everybody on that defensive line being winning in the trenches is going to be a big key to this game as well.
Just since we're still in early season, stepping back away from just this next game, how, if you kind of would give a prediction on where you think San Diego State ends up at the end of the season, um, whether that's a specific record or whether they'll make a bowl game, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've kind of been mulling over it for a while on where I think San Diego State's going to finish. And I think San Diego State's going to finish just able to get a bowl game. I think they're going to finish around 6 wins. It's just the defense looks good. It's a really good starter for the first game and everything, but the Mountain West, it's not top heavy like it has
Yeah,
been the last couple years of Boise State. Obviously, we saw Boise State last year and everything and how good they were, and Ashton Genty and terrific running backs. It's not as top heavy, but there's still talent. In the Mountain West, and it makes it
yeah,
really hard, going up against Fresno State, going up against Boise State, New Mexico. They played Michigan. On Saturday, and they actually held their own for a solid amount of the portion of the game.
yeah,
Being down 2 scores in Ann Arbor, even though in down 2 scores, that's still Ann Arbor, it's still Michigan, still a really
yeah,
tough, cool school to go against. And obviously, Cal looked great yesterday. That new freshman quarterback they have, he looked amazing, and obviously that's going to be the
yeah.
home game after the bye, after we face Washington State. So. I would say we finish around 6 wins. I think the ceiling for this team is eight wins. But I think San Diego State finishes around 6 and 6.
Yeah, I would say 6 or 7 is where I had it even before the Stony Brook game. Not a lot has changed. I do think that um, some Aztec fans feel that the Mountain West is worse just based on how those teams performed in their opening games. But as the Mountain West season gets off, every team has so much turnover these days that that first game is always tough to gauge on how that team's going to be, when they get in stride. Especially when they play non-conference games against teams that they're not very familiar with. So I do agree they're not as top heavy. The Boise obviously isn't going to be a playoff team. Unlikely, especially with the way they lost to South Florida. But I still think there's talent and there's a lot of good teams. Last year they lost 3 games by a total of 9 points, so they could have been 6 and 6 pretty easily. But they also won some games where they could have lost, so they could have been even worse than 3, right? They could have been a 2-win team. So it's at the end of the day, one thing we didn't talk about really, um, and then which factors into these um, low scoring games or close games is special teams, right? And San Diego State has really good special teams. Gabe Placencia made both of his field goals. He's made 14 in a row now. Hunter Green had a 67-yard punt that reminded us of the Matariza days. Um, so, like, I think those factors are also going to help, especially when you go on the road to Pullman and have to play Washington State. So yeah, I had them around 6 or 7 wins myself, so not very, almost identical to what you said. Um, but all you want to do if as a Mountain West team is get in the top 2 so you can get to play in that championship game. And I don't think necessarily that it's too far out of the question for them to get there. Um, but yeah, I think winning enough games to hit a bowl should be the floor for this team. Hopefully.
Yeah, and some Aztec fans say, in our past that really shouldn't be the goal is to make a bowl game. It should be
Yeah.
to compete for a Mountain West championship, and be in that title game, which I understand everything and all that, but just the way that the program has looked the last couple of years, you want to make small improvements, small improvements. Last year didn't make a bowl game, so this year let's make a bowl game. Let's get back to that. And then the following year, all right, we won a bowl game. Now let's compete for a Mountain West championship. Now let's get in that top 2, get in the championship game, and maybe pull one out Just taking those steps. You don't need those drastic long strides. Can it happen? Yeah, it can happen. It's happened before in a lot of programs. But expecting long strides is too high of an expectation, at least in my opinion. I think expecting those baby steps and making a bowl game should definitely be the expectation this year and not winning a Mountain West championship. Is it possible? Yes, anything's possible, especially with the talent that this team has. And I think Jaden Denegal, he has a very high ceiling. So if he hits that ceiling with the talent, the arm talent that he has and his rushing ability, I think Jaden Denegal is going to be the key to whether this team competes for a Mountain West championship or if this team ends up with 6 wins.
Agreed. Yeah, we'll see. As I said, they play Saturday night at 7:15, another late one. A lot of games this year, I believe, are 7:30 kickoff, so a lot of late games for San Diego State fans this year. Um, but yeah, it's a big one at Washington State, a team that they're going to be in a conference with starting next year. So they'll be um, playing them, for the foreseeable future. Any Aztec fans that are making the trip to Pullman, travel safe. As always, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see how the week goes in terms of Sean Lewis's presser on Monday and practice and any injury updates. And any last parting words, Bryant?
Only parting words is this team's going to show us how good they truly can be on Saturday. I think Saturday is going to be a huge indicator for how the rest of this season will go.
Yep. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. You can make sure to follow us on X, Instagram, and our YouTube channel for this video version of the podcast. And we'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your host, Andre Hagperdian.